My first one is the Radko Gudas incident, and then it was like I have like backup, like Mason Marshman running Stolars. That's exactly. I think that set the tone because that happened fairly early on, right? It happened in what, October,
Yeah,
uh,
that was like one of the first couple games of the year.
and just kind of set the tone for the entire year. Entire year. What if the Leafs actually played like a team and Carlo? I don't know what happened to this player. I just cross-checked Marchman and stuck up for Stolars. Maybe this trajectory would have been a lot different.
Welcome back to another episode of the Six on Ice podcast. I am one Anthony Carboni, and Anthony William is here with me once again to talk about the Leafs. I mean, it's the playoff time, and the Leafs are not in it, as unfortunate for many Leafs fans, and it just feels different. It feels different not having a postseason with the Maple Leafs, but nonetheless, there's still lots of news to talk about. I mean, that locker room cleanout day, we got a debrief about that. The GM search continues. The Marlies, they're doing well in the playoffs. And I want to talk about some moments that we thought were really good and not so good this year and rank them. But we got to say what's up to Anthony. How you doing? Let the audience know.
Doing good. Feeling a little bit empty inside, and that the Leafs are not in the playoffs. But I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully they can bounce back next year. I don't think if you asked me at the beginning of the season if we would be where we are right now, I would be like, no way. But such is life, and we will move on.
Our buddies at the oil rig are having a blast, at least commentating on one playoff team out of the Win Column family. Oh, I mean, yeah, shout out to the Oilers for winning their game last night, pushing it to 6, and I think honestly it'll go 7 games, but that's another discussion. But we're here to talk about the sixth squad, the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I want to start with the locker room cleanout day. I mean, that was a pretty big day, obviously. Like, just a few days after losing to Ottawa, the whole team comes together after game 82 and, talking about the season. Rube coming into it with everything that, has happened, with his name being on like the hot seat for pretty much, I want to say, like half the year at least. Austin Matthews being available to the media after like having a season-ending injury. Like, what were your honest thoughts? I mean, we did debrief about the Keith Pelly, you know, discussion before, but now seeing that the players and coach were, present speaking to the media, like, what did you think of the locker room cleanout day?
For me, 2 points stood out, Matthews and Riley. I think the biggest thing is when Keith Pelly was talking about how we're not going to be doing a rebuild and that we have core players like Nylander and Matthews. Matthews is like the one player, if he leaves after his contract expires in 2 years, full rebuild, hands down. For me, in the locker room cleanout, he wasn't really clear on his future. And I mean, it's to be expected, but the fact that he's like, I can't predict the future. There are steps that have to take place. It really feels like the Connor McDavid situation where he signed kind of a short-term 2-year, okay, let's do this now or never kind of thing. So I think he's waiting to see how the Leafs trend heading into next year and his contract year. I think Nylander also stated that he has no real interest in doing a rebuild. So it's do or die as the greatest Leaf, at least point scorer in history. And we're coming, I think, to the end of that potentially.
Yeah, I mean like that press conference, like if you're not like a Leafs fan and you had confidence in your captain, like oh yeah, he really wants to stay, with all the reports of him saying like he's willing to stay, like that kind of like just leaves a sour taste in your mouth, considering that he was so vague on the future of this team. And like the fact that he was just saying like I can't predict the future, like we'll see what happens, new management's got to make those decisions. You're the captain of your franchise, you're the star player, and you've like said many times before that you're committed to this team, and now all of a sudden you're being vague in the press conference for the locker room cleanout day. I just think like that right there, like I've said it for years too, like even like talking with like my friends about it, and it's just like Matthews, like I don't know if he can be like that kind of guy in the NHL where he can like lead a team, be a captain, and be a superstar. Like we've seen glimpses of him being a superstar, scoring 69 goals, but like ever since then, like it's just been a complete disappointment. And you know what? I honestly think like maybe like moving on from Matthews at some point would be like better for the franchise, and that the fact that they might not win with a guy like Matthews and the way he, you know, shows himself and presents himself to the media and just giving those kind of answers, kind of leaving Leafs fans like worried that like their superstar doesn't seem committed. And to me, it's just really disappointing to see. So I think maybe the Leafs would be better on like without him in the next couple of years.
And we'll have to see how he does next year. Next year will be the third season removed from his historic 69 goal season. But is he going to score 50 again? Is he going to score 40 again? Is he going to be like healthy again? It's kind of a reoccurring issue. He is very unhealthy, or he's not healthy, and he misses a lot of key games. He missed some playoff games. What was it, last season? Or was it the season before? And you're right. He's maybe not the guy to lead the team, and it's kind of a big problem. You're paying him over 13 million a year, and what are you going to do? We're kind of eerily in the same situation we were with Marner, except Marner had a out clause that we failed to use in his contract. But with Marner or with Matthews, we're locked in for the next 2 years. And are we going to get a good return on investment? Probably not. We're probably going to lose that trade. Sure, we'll get some draft picks and futures, but it's not going to be what Matthews is ultimately worth.
Yeah, I think honestly, like if you the time to trade him would be now if you really want to like reset and kind of retool this team, right? Like I think you can get a fair package, getting a solid defenseman, some picks, maybe a couple like players and build around like Nyes and Nylander. I think that could be a better option because I don't see Austin Matthews like leading this team anywhere at all, considering like his injury history, like people saying he's gonna break Ovi's record or break Gretzky's record, and the guy can't seem to stay
Doesn't
healthy.
look like it.
It's
Yeah,
like it's like it you need to be able to stay healthy and perform in big moments, and he has not been able to do so. Like Matthews can go down as one of the best players to like never win a Stanley Cup. Like he could be the next Matt Sundin. Like would that be a fair comparison?
probably. Except Sundin was able to get his teams to two conference finals and playing with, who was it? Jonas Hoagland and a bunch of other no names. Kind of insane how Matt Sundin elevated his line mates. And not to say Matthews doesn't do the same necessarily, but I think the magnitude where we saw Sundin kind of drag this team through tough moments was amazing to watch. But I've not seen Matthews do anything similar. Maybe a few moments here and there, like a flash in the pan kind of thing, but nothing consistent and nothing in a big playoff moment. Like when was the last time we saw him score like a big overtime goal in the playoffs? I can't really think of one. Has he ever for the Leafs?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, what do you think a package will look like? Like, imagine LA Kings call you and it's like, hey, we're gonna send you Brent Clark, we're gonna send you Quentin Byfield, and maybe like a couple first round picks or something, like, or even like the Rangers, we're gonna offer you Adam Fox, first round pick, and maybe a couple depth pieces up in our forward group for Matthews, or even like the Sharks. Like, imagine they get like Michael Misa's on the offer table, right? Like you never know. I feel like there's a lot the Leafs can do and a lot to play with to bring in the pieces that they're missing instead of having all their money focused on Austin Matthews.
Assuming Matthews wants out, you're right. You're kind of alluded to kind of two different packages. I would say the one from LA is more kind of a future kind of rebuild kind of package versus something from like the Rangers is more okay retooling. If we trade Matthews, if we lose our number one center, we have what, John Tavares as the number one C. It's pretty kind of bleak down the middle, but clearly it hasn't worked with Matthews here, and it's just something has to change. But on that, the other one, that name that stuck out, or other player that stuck out to me in the locker room cleanup was Riley, and it sounds like he might be willing to move his no move clause. Right? He doesn't seem as married to Toronto as I think a lot of fans and media make it out to be. So if Riley for Fox, let's go. That never happened, but
Best case scenario is Riley goes then waves it to go play for his hometown of Vancouver. I literally cannot see Riley playing in any other jersey other than a Vancouver jersey. What that package can maybe look like, maybe you get Hronik coming back, maybe a couple, maybe even try and get William in there. Like imagine if they get a guy like that, who knows? But I feel like if the Leafs were gonna find a trading partner for Riley, it would be to send him back home in BC in Vancouver.
I would agree. Think we cannot, if we want to seriously, if we want to keep Matthews, Nylander, and Nyes and everybody, we have to trade some of these core players that have been here for forever, and Riley has to be the one to go. We can't rerun the same core guys and just like put the supporting cast in a blender and okay, this year we're going to run with these bargain bin players. This year, these bargain bin players. It's just hasn't worked, and we need to change the culture, and we're going to get into that kind of when we talk about the GM and president MLC hiring. But it's yeah, I agree. I think Riley in Vancouver makes sense. And I think if Riley wants to wave at this point, and I think he kind of voiced his frustrations in the clean out and kind of, he's been here for a while and it's very disappointing and, change is bound to happen. So it's get out.
For those watching like these playoffs, like the Eastern Conference teams, like they look really strongly built. And comparing like if these teams come into next season the same, like the Leafs stand no chance of making playoffs because all these teams are built so well up down the lineup, defensively, goaltending. Like these Eastern Conference teams have it, and they're like playoffs are like kicking ass. Like there's some entertaining series, like the Montreal Tampa series or like the Boston Buffalo series. Like those are big like Atlantic Division teams, and with the way they're built, it doesn't seem like Toronto right now is built like that. And if they were to get into these playoffs, they probably would have gotten swept just like Ottawa. So there's got to be some kind of change where they're able to come back into next season and compete with the young teams like Montreal, the young teams like Buffalo, and the still ripe age Tampa Bay Lightning, and even the Florida Panthers, because for me that was a one-off year this year, them missing playoffs. So I think next year for sure they're going to try and get in for sure. So they really need to like take a long look in the mirror and see like what they need to do and make major moves to at least try and compete for a playoff spot, because the Atlantic Division next year is going to be a bloodbath.
Absolutely. And it's kind of interesting when I look at Tampa, when I look at Florida, when I look at Boston, they're not really a young team anymore. They're like kind of around where the Leafs are. They have some good young players in the system, and they seem to make shrewd trades. And it's kind of sad to seeing that Toronto. This is where Boston, Tampa Bay are, and Florida are right now. Is kind of where Toronto should have been. Maybe a Stanley Cup, or at least made it to the finals or the third round at least a couple times with this talent on this roster, and we just haven't. And it's just really disappointing. And whoever the GM is going to have to make some bold moves. Status quo is no longer an option with Matthews' clock running out, or his prime years running out at the very least in his contract. And yeah, it's things are dire.
Well, based off of like everyone that spoke at the locker room cleanout, like who do you see like staying and who do you see like going? Like for me, I feel like a lot of these like depth pieces, like I feel like new management's gonna come in and like Yarncroke's gotta go, or maybe even like we used to talk about Morgan Riley, but maybe Brandon Carlo gets dealt, right? Like who do you think like stays and who do you think like is going to be a part of like the next roster? We'll start with who you think's gone. Like give me just a couple names. You don't have to list like a whole bunch of them. Just a few like big guys that you think we're not going to come back next year.
I think everybody not named Nylander, Matthews, Wool are could be gone. Like, they're obviously want to trade the whole team, but I don't think there's very few untouchables. I think Jarnkrok is definitely gone. I think I read reports that he might be going to Sweden. Again, just rumors. It's just this team is so flawed in many different areas. It's kind of hard to say anyone in particular is kind of, I would say whoever needs to be gone should be gone. Jarnkrok, I think that the bottom six, maybe kind of trade half of it at the trade deadline with Waugh, McMahon, and Lawton. The other half, I'd say maybe Steven Lorentz probably stays. He's kind of seems to be a player that you would want to keep around. But yeah, I, I I think Domi should be traded. He hasn't really worked out here. Flashes in the playoffs 2 seasons ago with Bertuzzi and Matthews on the top line. But other than that, hasn't done anything. Yeah. So outside of Wool, Matthews, and Nylander, I think the GM should just be willing to, they get a good return, either picks, prospects, or other assets you can flip. You have to make those trades and just change the roster.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of big changes are set to come to Toronto, so we'll see what happens. I mean, the draft is coming up next week with their chances of, even keeping their pick being, I think, less than 50%. So like the Leafs could still, what is it, like 42% or something?
It's like I think 42 point something, I think. It's like, I
So just
assume, I assume that pick's already in Boston's hands, and they're going to draft a future Hall of Famer, and it's going to tear up Toronto for the next decade.
Well, like here's what's funny about that. Like they either like don't get that pick or they like draft Gavin McKenna and get first overall. Like it could be like that kind of like it's just very leafy for one of those things to happen. Like I don't think there's like a middle ground where
Yeah.
there's like a safe option. Like the Leafs getting like fourth or fifth. They're either gonna like get nothing or get like the Gavin McKenna on their team. Like it's actually insane. And if they let's just say like
Ooh,
let's just say they get the number one pick. Like do you like I think you gotta draft McKenna there.
absolutely.
Like you have to. Like that's probably like number one like undisputed number one draft pick this year, it seems. And like, I just like, if you see him, like I think you gotta go for it, and maybe you can leverage like trading like Matthews more now that you get McKenna coming up your pipeline. You maybe bring in some guys to like develop him. I don't know. Maybe you have a line of Nyes, McKenna, and Matthews or something like that, or something crazy like that, right? So that could be a potential option. Like, what do you think? Do you think they should draft McKenna?
Absolutely. That is the only case scenario that this season would be a major win is if we draft McKenna. It's kind of like in a way, it's kind of similar to when we signed John Tavares. So Matthews was still a youngish player, and then it kind of eventually became Matthews' team. I could see something similar. Matthews leaves in 2 years to go to a contender, or we don't re-sign him for whatever reason. Yeah, it would be essentially be McKenna's team to run.
What about, here's another thing, Connor McDavid and his contract expiring. After all if they lose to the Anaheim Ducks this year in like in the 7 game series, or they don't go on a magical playoff run, the rumors of him coming to Toronto have always been there. Like, does like McDavid signing that 2 year deal, saying, "Hey Edmonton, I'm giving you 2 more tries, build a good team, and we'll try and win a cup, and win or lose a Stanley Cup." I think McDavid's probably gonna end his chapter in Edmonton, but Toronto seems to be like the next favorite spot for probably the greatest player that I've ever watched hit the ice. Do you think that is an option, and do you think that's possible?
I mean, anything's possible. I think it's going to depend what the Leafs look like in 2 years. Right now, if McDavid's looking at the Leafs roster, is he going to think, yes, this is the roster that can bring me a cup? Probably not. But in 2 years, it'd be amazing. We draft McKenna and McDavid, and we do really well with McKenna and whatever offseason changes the new GM makes. And then we land McDavid. So yeah, like Matthews, if he wants to resign for a year or two, you have Matthews, you have McDavid, and that'll be insane. I feel that's like a 2% chance or a 1% chance of happening. I think it depends on where the Leafs are in 2 years. If they actually make it to the third round and they look good in every one of those games that they end up losing, or they make it to the finals and they end up, I think it depends how they lose, I guess, how they show up. I think that might entice McDavid to come if he wants. But other than that, if it's more of the same first round exits, second round exits, I don't think he comes.
Yeah, I would have to agree. So the draft lottery is next week. So I believe so. We're gonna find out where the Maple Leafs will draft, even if they even draft in the top 10, which, the fact that the Boston Bruins could, potentially go to the second round and still have like the fifth overall pick or sixth overall pick is insane, right? Like, that's just insane. But we're going to have to wait to see what happens there. And, obviously the GM is going to have to make those decisions, which is what we're going to talk about right now, is like their GM search. It seems that, I forget the other guy's name, but Matt Sundin is like definitely like in the organization's radar. They're just waiting for a decision from him because he definitely has been approached, franchise guy. He like potential greatest Maple Leaf of all time, other than Matthews. The guy's been like the face of the Leafs for the longest time, getting the team to like 2 conference finals. Most goals until Matthews broke it. So he is like, they're waiting on an answer from him. And I forget the other guy, but I believe he was the GM of the Coyotes at some point, from what my understanding is. Can you touch upon that?
Yeah, it's John Chakra. Chaka? I'm probably butchering his name. Yeah, I find this is kind of, how do I feel about this? I mean, he's interesting, I guess, and he kind of fits, I get, Keith Pelly's kind of mold. He wants an analytics driven person, and that's who he is. He's known to be analytics. He has his own firm that he founded for on hockey analytics. But he also did some kind of shady stuff in his time as general manager. He violated the NHL Combine rules for illegal prospects, I guess, assessments, lost the Coyotes a first and a second. He tried to talk other teams during his employment with the Coyotes.
My
There's so
goodness.
many other talent out there, and it seems we're really going to go for this dude. And it's kind of makes me sad in a way. He seems like a Timo Dubas, to be honest. It seems the person to fire should have been Brandon Shanahan, and we should have just kept Kyle Dubas in hindsight. But let's bury that, let's repress that line of reasoning. It's I feel now we don't know what Sundin's role is going to be. Are they going to make him the president of hockey operations? He has what managerial experience with the 2016 Swedish team for the World Cup of Hockey, if I'm not mistaken. Very, very limited. I just can't see them making him the president of hockey operations. It just seems too much of a jump for his skill set. Now, if they're bringing him in to change the culture, is he going to be like the vice president of hockey operations, or like I don't know. It just seems they are nostalgia baiting the Leafs fan base. Like, oh, Matt Sundin, well, like person on and off the ice. Let's bring him in to patch things over, which is kind of funny because they're kind of playing everything's under control. We have a plan, and yet they're bringing in Sundin to kind of fix the culture. So they know there's a problem. They're just not really admitting to the fans that there is a problem.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like you see these teams like Philly and you see teams like Buffalo, like guys that have been in the organization for a long time, like as players, as like, longtime coaches, like these guys played. Like I'm looking at Philly, I'm seeing like Rick Tocchet, I'm seeing Keith Jones, and I'm seeing Danny Briere, all guys that played for the Flyers, now being in these big roles for this organization. Look how the Flyers are doing. A team that nobody thought would make playoffs this year is now potentially is one win away from the second round. I feel like Toronto needs to like bring in some of those guys, like
Agreed.
reach out to like Tucker, reach out to like, Ty Domi, see if these guys want to be a part of the organization. Having these guys in like even in the vicinity of the organization, just having some kind of role is like guys like who bleed the blue, like bleed the logo, right? I think would like 100% benefit the team, and I would 100% be on board with seeing Matt Sundin taking a big role, and maybe even maybe he takes like the GM role or the president operations role, and and Pelly brings in a guy who has like the analytics experience, or like someone that's been a GM or assistant GM of another team, and bring them together to maybe do something big with this organization.
Oh, 100%. The fact that Mats wants to be involved is great. And it's interesting. A lot of the Leafs alumni, so like you mentioned Tucker and Domi, we often see them during games in the stands, but we don't really see them on the ice during practices or see them around like the guys like we do in the other teams that you've mentioned, like Philly and even like San Jose. I agree. I think they need to really bring in the guys who, like you said, bleed the blue and white, and hopefully that rubs off on some of these players. It's just for the GM role. I would have liked somebody like Scott White. He's currently the general manager of the Texas Stars. Has a strong endorsement from the current Stars GM, Jim Nill. Has more than 20 years experience in draft and prospect development, running the AHL affiliate. Like he seems like a strong candidate, and we're kind of leaning towards this person who's, I think, his latest work is like managing Wendy's franchises, from Possum Pizza to Wendy's franchise. All right, I do love me a Baconator. It's I don't know, but we'll see what happens. We had so many sagas during the search. First, it was going to be Doug Armstrong for the longest time. Then it was going to be Mike Gillis, and so who knows? We don't really know what's going on. At the end
I
of the day,
think I think Sonny from the guy who went to the Devils from Florida
yeah,
would have been a great option. Winning a Stanley Cup with the Panthers and being a hockey fan. Like he even said he grew up cheering for the Devils. Like he knows the game just by like cheering for them, and then going into the Panthers organization, like winning a Stanley Cup there would have brought that experience over to Toronto, which would have been nice. But that's the thing. It's going to be a very, very difficult task. The market is very, very, very small for general managers, and you're not going to find an NHL seasoned one at the moment. You might find, obviously, like Matt Sundin's an option, or maybe some guys in the AHL, but it's a very small market, and the Leafs really, I mean, they got to pick soon. They need a general manager to make the draft picks for the draft, right? So within the next couple of weeks, I would assume that they found their
100%. And I think it's kind of important that because I think the longest time they were only going to, so when they fired Shanahan, they only wanted the GM to report to Pelly. I think we need some more layers to kind of, I don't know if you read the Athletic article about Pelly and his use of AI and being
Oh, I heard about that stuff. Yeah, what was going on with that? Like, what kind of person of running $1 billion organization? You're running the Leafs, Raptors, TFC, Argos, and you're using AI to like help you like figure out
with like
like
trade returns.
like
Yeah, exactly.
what are you doing, buddy? Like,
What are
come
you
on.
doing?
Like
It's
where
so
like
he's too
it's insane.
involved. He's too involved. Too involved. So we need to have a president of hockey operations back. We need to have a GM, obviously. So I think, yes, more bureaucracy in this case will be good to keep Pelly maybe away from the team and his involvement. He says he's not involved, but he's quite clearly too involved. So, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting week
If
or
you got
two.
if you got to come out and say like, yo, I didn't see Buffalo, I didn't see Montreal like, coming up the pipeline, like, yeah, you're not involved, like, you don't know what you're talking about if you haven't been watching NHL hockey the past like year and a half. So for me,
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. Keith Pelly needs to step his foot and go maybe look at like the Argos or TFC, because TFC is kind of garbage. So I think you gotta go put yourself somewhere else and get out of it and get, because the Maple Leafs on their own are like probably like as much, if not like more difficult than handling like the other three teams that MLSE is a part of. Like the Leafs are like one of, if not the biggest like NHL franchises. They're worth the most. So
Yep.
like on their own, it's one tough task. So being for him to like bounce back and forth, it's just kind of hard. So you need to find a good GM, a good candidate for a GM, and a president of hockey ops so that can handle everything that Pelly was trying to do this year, but failed miserably. So we'll see how that search goes. Within the next couple of weeks, we should see something happen. But I mean, with this new GM coming in, could they replace Craig Berube? In the locker room cleanout day, Berube was asked if he sees himself being back. No hesitation. No hesitation. It's just like, yes, yeah, I'm coming back. So does Craig Berube like remain the Leafs head coach? I'll give you my thoughts, but I want to hear yours first. Do you think he remains head coach the next year?
I hope not. I think if we were to keep, say, Trey living, and so we kept Shanahan, so we kept both for whatever reason, I think the biggest mistake would be keeping Craig Berube for another year. His system clearly doesn't work for this roster construction, and whatever his system was trying to achieve, he's trying to recreate, I guess, the 2019 St. Louis Blues. We don't have the personnel or the assets to turn this roster into that kind of a team. I think Berube cannot be head coach next year of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly listen. It's tough. It's tough. Honestly, like the fact that they hasn't been done already, or even like throughout the middle of the season, like kind of indicates that he probably will be back. And him coming into the media, like saying like highly confident, like, yeah, I'll be back. And I feel like this is going to be a similar situation with Dubas. I remember when Dubas was fired and Shanahan came in, he gave Sheldon Keefe another year to like, see what was happening, feel out the coach, work with him, and then ended up firing him next year because they didn't do so well, right? I think they lost. I don't know if they lost. They didn't. When did they lose? I think that was Boston. They lost to Boston the next year, or was it Florida? I don't remember. But I could see a similar scenario happening where the next GM like wants to work with Berube one on one and like this year and like see for himself like if Berube is really the problem, because it's hard to if they missed the playoffs in their first year with Berube and they were garbage. Yeah, I get that, sure. But like they had a great record in Berube's first year. They won the division title. Like Marner hit 100 points for the first time in his like career. They pushed Florida to game 7, and arguably if they beat Florida could have won the Stanley Cup. So what, like, maybe it's not Craig Berube, maybe it's some of these players. And that's where I think the GM's going to come in and say, listen, like, I'm going to give this guy a chance and see what happens. Because ultimately, if it doesn't work out but by Christmas time, you just can the guy and look for someone else. But for me, that's what can happen. And that's probably what's going to happen if it hasn't been done already.
That's a good point. The fact that he's still been around. But I mean, we fired the GM though. So it's kind of like, is Pelly going to make that call on his own? Seems to be wanting to make trade deals on his own. But anyways, I think this has been a recurring theme with this roster, with this team for the last decade. Is it the coaching systems? Is it the players? And I think it's a bit of both. Now, we've shuttled the bottom 6 and the defense around, minus Riley, over and over again. We still have Matthews and Nylander and John Tavares, and that's great. And Marner, I guess, until last year. I think what's more likely is that you can get a coach that can get more out of this roster than trying to use whatever little assets we have left to make this team into a more Berube kind of hockey team. And it's kind of weird because it worked for the first year. The first year they were kind of playing. Last season, first 4 months, they were kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You can kind of see the old Sheldon Keefe kind of hockey, but you can kind of see the Berube kind of elements of the forechecking and the being aggressive on the puck carrier. And then as we went through Christmas and then into April when they put on that run to win the division, it was like, wow, this team is actually playing good going into the playoffs for the first time in years. And they gave confidence like, hey, this team might actually do some damage. And to your point, it's kind of interesting. If they were to beat Florida in game 7, where could they have ended up? Maybe they would have went to the finals. So, but the fact that they had such a bad showing this season, I think the easier route is just to replace him with like a Bruce Cassidy or even a David Carl. But I would prefer a Bruce Cassidy at this point. Pete DeBoer was my other candidate, but he's now the head coach of the Islanders. The Islanders took him pretty fast. I'm on team Bruce Cassidy.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up for candidates Bruce Cassidy. I mean, he did go out and say that he wants to win a Stanley Cup with a Canadian team, and I feel like his presence would fit nicely on the Maple Leafs. And Pete DeBoer would have been a great alternative also, but he got scooped up. What if like now? What would you think? Imagine like you know they fire Keefe and or sorry, Berube, and all of a sudden you see Patrick Waugh's name come into the headlines. Or I mean, John Tortorella is like I guess the vacant head coach for Vegas. Like, what if he like decides to come coach the Leafs? Like, imagine one of those two guys like coming in here and coaching these guys. Like, what would your honest reaction be if they fire Berube and they bring in like Waugh or Torts?
I think I would have two reactions. If Bruce Cassidy is still on the table and they willfully go and get Patrick Waugh or John Tortorella, I would probably be sad. Now, if Bruce Cassidy gets picked up and they bring in like Tortorella, I would be like, why not try it? What can you do much worse? I guess.
Well, assuming Tortorella doesn't get like rehired by Vegas, I mean, right, they didn't like extend him or anything. This is just the end of the year.
End of the
But
year,
I
yeah.
mean, if Vegas goes on a run or at least makes it to the second round, I'm sure he's going to come back and coach for them. But that would just be insane. One guy I think before Berube even came in, and this was a really important guy. It would have been Joe Quenneville to have him as the Leafs coach. Like you see what he's doing with a young team like Anaheim. Unfortunately, I think it was the year after that they reinstated him back into the NHL, and then his first year back. I mean, now he's second all time in playoff wins as a head coach. He would have been a great option for Toronto. Especially like him coaching like prime Patty Kane and prime Tays, Marion Hossa, Duncan Keith,
Brent
Brent
Seabrook.
Seabrook, Corey Crawford, like unreal, man. Like that would have been a great guy to have on your team.
Yeah, I could see it from that perspective. I think MLSE just wanted to avoid the landmine. I'm okay not taking Quenville personally, but seeing how things played out with Berube kind of makes me wonder, like, okay, what if we went in a different direction and we took Quenville or somebody else? And we're running, like I said, like we discussed earlier, we're running out of time with this roster. We have like for sure 2 years to at least make the finals. And given that we've looked pretty bad in the second round, the twice that we made it in the last decade doesn't really inspire much confidence. I think the narrative around this team would be so different if they made it to the third round or if they actually looked good in those defeats against Florida. But there's just really no indication that this team is going to put it together by the time Matthews' contract is over.
Yeah, exactly. Like I agree. If they didn't lose in such horrible fashion, or if they went to at least the conference final once, put up a good showing in those defeats, then yeah, well, the conversations wouldn't be as crazy. But considering like there hasn't been like any like sense of dominance in those rounds, yeah, they could have went up 3-0 against Florida, but they didn't. And then in games 5 and 7 on home ice, you got blown out. The fact that they haven't been able to like perform in those high elimination scenario games, and even their star players going pointless in most of them, especially Matthews and Marner when Marner was even here, it's just been something that has been on everybody's mind. And yeah, if they were to perform, I don't think it would be as bad, all these talks of like retooling, rebuilding, blah blah blah. But because they didn't do that, that's why we're having these conversations, that's why we're sitting here talking about it. So for me, like that's what could have happened and how it could have led to this.
Hot take. I think my favorite series is probably the Washington Capitals series in 2017. I did not like that young Leafs team laid it all out. I found they tried in every game. They took, what was it, 4 of the 6 games to overtime,
Yeah.
and they looked like, okay, encouraging. They played their hearts out, and then year after year is this demoralizing defeat after defeat. So for me, 2017 playoff run, I guess you could say, or spurt was probably the highlight of this franchise in the playoffs, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, I mean, the young team who made it think it was one of the wild card spots playing in division capitals, doing something there was pretty interesting and pushing them to 6 games, right? But, well, we move on. I mean, now we got to talk about some of the upcomers, in the Marlies. Obviously, their playoffs are going on right now. I believe they made it to the next round, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So they've got some guys that, could potentially make the team next year. I mean, obviously, some of these guys that are on the current Leafs roster are gonna be gone, I would assume, if the GM has his head out of the sand. But we don't know with some of these guys that come in here. They could love the personality of the player and just like Keefe did with Kerfoot all these years, and kind of guys like that. So I mean, we're gonna have to see, but yeah, some of these guys that I see, obviously Easton Cowan. I mean, look at him. When he goes back to the AHL, you can just see the NHL has rubbed on him, and the experience of him playing in those big games and those those the fights that he's been getting into, that he's absorbed all that and he's brought that to the AHL playoffs and he's looked great. Bo Giroux as well. I mean, the stint he had with Toronto coming up and, scoring a couple of goals in the few games that he's played, looking he could be a potential third, maybe even second line center at some point if some more development. That would be amazing. And then Dennis Hildeby, the pretty obvious, choice. I mean, on many podcasts now, we've been talking about how Anthony Stolarz should be traded and you can run with Wall and Hildeby. And even the Russian guy coming up, Artemov, I believe is his
Yep.
name. So, just imagine, you have Hildeby come up and play, and all year that he's played for the Leafs, he's looked good. Especially the one game that comes to mind is that Winnipeg game where they were just getting outplayed all game, and his great effort, brought them to overtime and getting the win anyway. I think for me, those are the three players that will probably make the roster next year for sure. Especially Giroux on that fourth line, and then even having Easton Cowan maybe taking a bigger role in playing maybe second, maybe even first line across with Matthews or Tavares.
Agreed. I definitely think Bogu should be on the Leafs roster. Just what we saw. I mean, 3 goals, 2 assists in 13 games, but I think he got most of those points in his first couple of games with the Leafs. Uh, he plays the game how fans like. He plays a very tough game. He led the Marlies in scoring with 28 goals, and it's just such a crying shame that Berube took so long just to be willing to play him. I guess it was trailing to call him up, but I think part of the issue is if had we played more of our prospects, we could kind of see, okay, who could ideally make the roster next year or have a very good chance of making the roster, and then they can kind of build their offseason plans with kind of their prospects of, okay, if we don't get this player in free agency or through a trade, hey, we can give this kid a realistic look, but they just didn't really play the rookies this year. But nonetheless, I think Bogu, I think William Villeneuve could also make the roster. He led the Marlies defense in points this season, mainly assists, so he's not really, I guess, a goal scorer, but who knows? But he can move the puck, and the Leafs really need a puck-moving defenseman on the back end.
What about Quillen? Do you think Quillen makes the team next year?
He could. Third or fourth line player now that we don't have Lawton or Waugh. Absolutely. And in the games that Berube played him, he didn't really stand out. He looked pretty solid.
Well, how about reuniting the Nylander brothers and having Alex and Willie playing together on a line? Do you think we can see that a few times next year, or is it just out of the air? I mean, obviously Michael Nylander, their father, is kind of cheese seeing that one son is doing so well while the other is kind of not playing any NHL games.
It's kind of surprising with Alex Nylander, right? Because he came from Columbus and he scored, what was it, 18 goals, 15 goals, and it's okay, there might be a player here, and then he just didn't really materialize for the Leafs. Sometimes you hit, sometimes you miss, I guess. Do I think he's going to be up? Probably not at this point, to be honest. But it was nice to see both Nylander and Alex, or William and Alex play together. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, for the bit that we saw, it was kind of nice to see the brothers play, but it's going to be an interesting offseason depending on who they bring in and who can make the roster next year. They need a GM for the draft. Are they even going to get that fifth pick or draft in the top 10? We don't even know yet. So we're going to find out next week if they even draft then. But until then, I mean, we can just reminisce on this crazy season. Like, do you have any, like, give me some of your favorite moments, if there were any at all? Like, considering how it all went and how it all just played out, like, do you have anything that like sticks to mind or like comes to mind that, that you really enjoyed seeing this year?
For me, I think it was Easton Cowan, to be honest. I think he came in the training camp unsure if he was going to make the roster. He makes the roster because he showed that he played defense, made it on the third and fourth line. And then he really showed his offensive skill set in the latter third of the season when we kind of traded half of our team and sat half the other half. And so I think seeing Cowan kind of develop that way was really nice to see, to be honest. I wish he would have got more opportunities in the top six throughout the year, but it is what it is. So I think for me, Easton Cowan was how he developed, started on the third and fourth line, and then kind of grew more comfortable playing against men.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there's a lot of like disappointments, but I will give Dennis Hildeby credit. Like, I think that guy's gonna be the franchise goalie. In the next like couple years, because I don't know if I can really trust Wall with his injuries and all the stuff that's happened with him. Like, Dennis Hildeby has proven like I don't think he had a bad game this year, and if he did, it was pretty much on the team who didn't play defense in front of him. So I would give Dennis Hildeby like my highlight. And I would agree with you on the Easton Cowan as well. I want to talk about some disappointments. I mean, there were many, but for me, the first one that comes to mind is the response for Austin Matthews and
Yep.
Anthony Stolarz earlier in the year as well. Like, that's kind of what started everything, eh? I don't know if you kind of like picked up on that, but since like like nobody defended their goalie and Stolarz called out the team, like it's kind of just like, did you just say that to me? Like, we've never been like talked to like this before, and like it just rubbed on the whole team all year. If you ask me.
Agreed, and that's what I have in my notes. My first one is the Radko Gudas incident, and then it was like I have like backup, like Mason Marchment running Stolars. That's exactly. I think that set the tone because that happened fairly early on, right? It happened in what, October,
Yeah, that was like one of the first couple games of the year.
and this kind of set the tone for the entire year. Entire year. Again, what if the Leafs actually played like a team and Carlo, I don't know what happened to this player. I just cross-checked Marchman and stuck up for Stollers. Maybe this trajectory would have been a lot different. Who knows? Hard to pin it on one exact moment, but it's, yeah, this team's lack of response in big moments, both performing and pushing through and moving on in the playoffs, but also to like these kinds of moments with the Gudis knee on Matthews and Stolarz being run repeatedly in his time here in Toronto. Yeah, it's really crappy. It's
I
shitty.
think I think another like crappy moment. I mean, they lost to like a lot of their divisional rivals. I think not beating Ottawa this year at least once kind of like stings a little bit, like losing to your Ontario rival, especially in like some of like the games, like especially that last game where they were just like outplayed like crazy by a team that doesn't seem that they're much better. Like, just seeing some of these games that they've played in the final stretch where they're just getting like ran out of the building. And like they still have those guys. Like Tavares was playing like Nyes, like Nylander, like they just look so bad. Like, I've never seen the Maple Leafs look this bad in a very long time. And like, losing to Ottawa, like knowing how their fans are is kind of disappointing as well. Not even being able to win one game this year.
It begs the question to kind of loop back to your Berube locker room cleanout where you said, yes, I'm going to be here next year. If you had the confidence that you were going to be back, why wouldn't you have sat Matthew Nyes, who's been injured all season? Why wouldn't you sit John Tavares, who probably needs some rest? Just I think he was auditioning for his next NHL job, and he'll get hired again, no doubt. But I think it's just yeah. I think not beating the divisional rivals and not really looking good against really any of them.
Yeah, like I'm trying to like think about it. Like, they lost, I think they played the Habs 4 times. They lost three of them besides the home opener. I think did they beat Detroit at all? Like, I think Detroit swept them all year too, if I'm not mistaken. Boston, I don't think they beat Boston. I think they beat Boston in overtime, if I'm not mistaken. I think they beat Boston once. Buffalo they beat once. I mean, it said Ottawa, Florida.
I have it here. So they went 1-2-1 against the Sabres, 1-1-0 against the Bruins, 0-2-1, you were right, against the Red Wings, 2-2 against the Panthers, 1-2 against Montreal.
And then Ottawa.
It says 1-2-0 against the Senators, but I don't think we beat the Senators.
I don't remember if the Leafs beat Ottawa.
I think that's a mistake here,
Point is, they struggled against their rivals.
dude.
Like, and that's something you can't do. If you're gonna lose games, like, yeah, you can lose. That's the thing. They'll go into like Ball Arena in Colorado this year and like take out the number one seeded Avalanche in overtime,
It's
right?
so lucky.
But like, you can't even beat like Ottawa in your own barn. Like, how does that make any sense? How are you losing all your games to Ottawa, but you can like beat Colorado? Just like it's just like blows my mind. Or you go into Minnesota off like the second half of a back to back and like beat the Wild after they got Quinn Hughes, like, but you go and lose to like the Red Wings who can't even make playoffs in 10 years. It just doesn't really like. It's just very leafy, and the fact that that is even a term like just goes to show like things need to change. Like, imagine saying like, oh, that's very leafy of them to like choke and then come back or whatever it is. What kind of reputation is that to have as like one of the most historic franchises of all time? All these guys that used to play are probably rolling in their graves right now, like just seeing like these guys play. It's just no heart, no nothing, and even in the final stretch, just getting like losing like every single game, not winning one game in their last like 8 or 10 games. It's just brutal.
Agreed. It's whoever they hire to be GM, it's going to be a hell of a mess to clean up. It's not only do you need to make roster changes where you have a lot of guys who have no move clause or no trade clauses, you need to get this team to make the playoffs. And as we just discussed, our division rivals are looking pretty good in the playoffs, and we're not. And we can't seem to beat them in the regular season. So playoffs are different, obviously, but still, just seeing Buffalo, Montreal kind of just rise and continue to rise year after year, and Toronto just going down after every year. It's going to be tougher.
I want to ask one more question. I want to ask, give me your way too early like season predictions for the Leafs. Like, where do they finish? Do they finish in a playoff spot?
I
I know,
think they
like, we know nothing. We know nothing of what's gonna happen in the offseason. Just give me, like, fast forward a year from now. Are they in the first round of the playoffs? Like fighting in a games 5 or 6 right now?
I think they're going to be in a wild card spot. To be honest, I don't think they're going to be um, as high in the division. And to be honest, as Florida showed, was it last season? Actually, they just got in and then they won the show. But I think they're going to be a wild card team. I think they're going to struggle to find their I guess identity, like they seem to struggle every year. I think it's going to be a new coach. I hope it's a new coach, but it's just going to be be a struggle. I think they ultimately do get in. I think there's too much talent on this roster. Keep in mind, we had a lot of injuries this year. Losing Tanev was huge on the back end, and he was out for pretty much the whole season, a large chunk of the season, anyways. We weren't without our starting goaltender and Stolers to start the year. So, I I think they make the playoffs, but I think they're going to be a wild card team.
I would have to agree with you, or they just barely make, like they barely miss. They're like going to be in, or they're going to be in by a little bit or out by a little bit. I think that Tampa, Montreal, Buffalo are probably going to be those top three positions again. Florida's going to come back into the frame. Ottawa's always sniffing their nose around the wild card, and maybe it was just a one and done for Boston. Like, who the hell knows? And even Detroit, like Detroit's like changes will happen in Detroit, so maybe something big will happen there, but if you ask me, there's not really a bad team in the Atlantic Division heading into next year.
There's not.
There's no rebuilding squads in the Atlantic Division. Like, think about that, dude. When was the last time we saw that where every team wasn't in a rebuild? Nobody is. Nobody's in a rebuild. Like, 5 of these teams have made playoffs 2 years in a row.
I think out of all the teams, I think Toronto was the closest team to undergoing a full
Right?
rebuild.
And they just almost beat Florida last year in Game 7. It's
I will
insane.
say I will say this. Like I know we've been kind of crapping on the Leafs, but I think what gets kind of lost in this narrative, and it's not really, I guess, a good argument, but the Atlantic Division is probably one of the harder divisions to go through. And yeah,
The hardest. The hardest.
you have to go through good teams to make it to the playoffs. But okay, you beat Tampa Bay, then you're playing probably Boston or Florida, and then you're playing either Carolina. Like it's just, I don't know. I think something has to be said about the quality of competition. Maybe I'll run the analytics on that because I'm kind of curious now. But it's yeah, there's no bad teams, and in the Atlantic, the race was like tight for like the whole season. Usually by January, February, you kind of know, okay, cool, these are going to be the teams that are going to make the playoffs. But it was like
In
insane.
January, Detroit was leading the Eastern Conference.
Yeah,
Like, think about what can happen in the span of 3 months. So, at the end of the day, it's a waiting game. It's a tough division. You gotta be able to win these games, and that's where we're gonna see where the heart of these guys is, the core guys. Can they compete with all these other teams who are trying to compete? That's where we're gonna find out next year. The GM should be hired within the next few weeks. The draft lottery is coming up next week. Keep your eyes peeled. We're going to see if they either keep that pick or lose that pick or draft Gavin McKenna. All of these scenarios are possible in Leafland, and we are all here to see what happens. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Leave a like, subscribe, tell your friends, check out our articles on the Six on Ice website. Our producer, Greg, will put that in the description, hopefully, in this video. And is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
It's going to be another chaotic off season, and I'm here for it.
We are all here for it. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take care and peace.